President Trump announced that he's expecting to be indicted over January 6th. This is what the former president posted on his Truth Social account. He said, "Wow, on Sunday night, while I was with my family, having just arrived from the Turning Point event in Florida, where I won the straw poll against all other Republican candidates with 85.7%, with all polls showing me leading in the Republican primary by very substantial numbers. Almost everyone predicting that I will be the Republican nominee for president. And as I am leading Democrat Joe Biden in the polls by a lot, horrifying news for our country was given to me by my attorneys. Deranged Jack Smith," President Trump wrote, "the prosecutor with Joe Biden's Department of Justice sent a letter," again, it was Sunday night, "stating that I am a target of the January 6th grand jury investigation and giving me a very short 4 days to report to the grand jury, which almost always means an arrest and indictment." So now Joe Biden's Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who I turned down for United States Supreme Court, in retrospect, based on his corrupt and unethical actions, a very wise decision, together with Joe Biden's Department of Injustice, have effectively issued a third indictment and arrest of Joe Biden's #1 political opponent, who is largely dominating him in the race for presidency. "Nothing like this," President Trump said, "has ever happened in our country before or even close. They illegally spied on my campaign, attacked me with a totally fake dossier that was funded by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the DNC, impeached me twice. I won. They failed on the Mueller witch hunt, no collusion. They failed on the Russia hoax, the 51 intelligence agents fraud, the FBI Twitter files, the DOJ Facebook censorship, and every other scam imaginable. But on top of all of that," President Trump writes, "they have now effectively indicted me 3 times. The DOJ staffed and runs the DA's office in Manhattan, with a probable 4th coming in Atlanta, where the DOJ are in strict and possibly illegal coordination with the district attorney, whose record on murder and other violent crime is abysmal. This witch hunt is all about election interference and a complete and total political weaponization of law enforcement. It is a very sad and dark period for our nation." I thought at the beginning of the show that I would just read a portion of that to you, but I thought, I'll just read the first couple sentences. But as it turns out, the entire statement is one sentence. It is one gigantically long sentence. So we got to enjoy the whole thing. The fact of the matter is, Trump is right. This is effectively an indictment. And when I say effectively an indictment, we can expect an indictment to come from the Department of Justice. They're going to indict Trump related to January 6th. And we've been saying all along that this is what the Department of Justice, I know they appointed a special counsel, Jack Smith. This is what they have been gunning for the entire time. This has been their goal the entire time. Do you think that the Department of Justice actually cared about the QAnon shaman, Jacob Chansley? Do you think the Department of Justice actually cared about Stewart Rhodes? Who on earth is Stewart Rhodes, this unsavory character that very few of us had ever heard about, and yet he was convicted of seditious conspiracy, which is essentially treason, sentenced to nearly 2 decades in prison, 18 years. That's the entire childhood of a person. Do you think the Department of Justice ever really cared about them? No. The Department of Justice never cared about the Proud Boys or the Oath Keepers. They didn't care about really anyone that was involved in January 6th, except for President Trump. This entire operation that has been run by the Department of Justice, indicting and charging and convicting or coercing plea deals from over 1,000 different people involved in the disturbance on January 6th, was always about getting President Trump. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about exactly what they're doing, exactly what we can expect, and exactly how they're going to try to put Trump in prison. It was always the plan of the Department of Justice to get President Trump. They hate him. The visceral hatred that they feel for this man is like nothing we've ever seen in modern politics. They want him to rot in prison, and they don't care that he's not guilty of any of the crimes that they accuse him of. So because he's not guilty of any of the things that they've accused him of, because he's not Putin's puppet, because he didn't collude with Russia, because he didn't rape somebody or whatever that accusation was, because he didn't do something sinister with Zelensky back when Zelensky was a villain just a couple of years ago. Remember, they impeached Trump over his phone call with Zelensky? That's back when the left told us Zelensky was bad news, because back then Ukraine was corrupt, even though now, of course, it's a democracy that we should spend in our entire life savings in supporting, giving weapons to. But I digress. The radical left has never been able to pin any of these things on Trump because they've all been lies. And so what the left has done is they've created a concerted effort. The word I want to use is they've created a conspiracy. It's a real conspiracy. Now, there's a difference between a conspiracy theory and a conspiracy. A conspiracy theory is our speculation about what might be happening. A conspiracy is an effort to trap someone. It's an effort to get Trump. And that's exactly what they're doing here. So the way that this happened, this started culturally first. Culturally, the Department of Homeland Security, in conjunction with the FBI, in conjunction with leftist talking heads on TV, started to attack language. They started to accuse Republicans of saying words that the left said weren't just words, they weren't just free speech, but they were actual violence. So you saw this cultural effort to not just demonize what we say as bad and what we say as hateful, even though it's not. We saw this effort to present this new idea that words could actually cause physical harm. Long gone are the days when we could say sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That's the opposite of what the left has been doing. So they've started this effort to convince us that words could actually harm people. And the reason that they did that or are doing it, it's a continuing effort, is because they want to make any of our concerns about what happened in the 2020 presidential election, they want to make that some sort of violence. Because if it's just words, then they really can't do anything about it. But if they can convince our legal system, if this cultural effort by the left to turn words into violence, if they can use that cultural effort to convince the legal system that words are violence, then anytime someone says, stop the steal, anytime someone says 2,000 mules, anytime someone says unmanned drop boxes round the clock, anytime someone says universal mail-in ballots, anytime someone says signature verification degraded, anytime someone points out what happened in Wisconsin, for example, where election rules and regulations were changed and changed outside of the authority of who was allowed to change them and when, and actually violated the Constitution of the state, which should have rendered that election in 2020 invalid in Wisconsin. Even the Wisconsin Supreme Court said that. They said the only reason we didn't overturn this is because it's so far, it already happened. It's so far in the past that we don't want to shake up American democracy by doing that. But the Wisconsin Supreme Court said, should these things happen again, it would render a future election invalid. But the left doesn't want us to talk about that. They want a gag order put on us. They want us to be criminalized if we say that. And so they started a cultural movement, and then it leached into a legal movement. Stewart Rhodes, very unsavory character. I'd never heard of him before he was charged by the Department of Justice. Apparently, he's one of the head honchos of the Oath Keepers. I don't care about him at all. He didn't commit any violence. He didn't assault any police officers. He didn't break into the Capitol. He didn't encourage anybody to break into the Capitol. He didn't bring a firearm to D.C. where it would have been illegal. He did none of that. So I couldn't care less about him, except for the fact that he was convicted of seditious conspiracy. Now, seditious conspiracy is essentially the same as treason. He was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison for this conviction. And the conviction, what did it hinge on? On what was this charge against him based? It was based on a text message that he sent, a conversation that he had, speech that he had used to his friends privately. And the Department of Justice said, well, we have now demonized speech in the eyes of the American public. Let's now codify our idea that speech is violence into law. Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.